You're good to go.
Thank you, Alex.
Welcome, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to the East Bay Regional Park District Board Operations Committee. Today is Tuesday, March 14th, and it's 12:32. Ready to go. We're on time. So East Bay Regional Park District intends to hold these committee meetings through a hybrid platform of in-person and remote attendance to allow members of the public to participate via remote attendance through the Park District's virtual platform. The Board of Directors and the designated staff will, with limited exceptions, participate in person at the Park District headquarters, 2950 Peralta Oaks Court, Oakland, California. Occasionally, members of the Board of Directors may attend remotely pursuant to the Brown Act as amended by AB 2449. And members of the public can listen and view the meeting in the following ways. And Denise, could you please let the public know how they can participate?
Sure. Today's meeting is being held pursuant to the Brown Act. Staff is providing live audio and video streaming. Members of the public wishing to make a public comment may do so live via Zoom, via email to boardopscommittee@ebparks.org, or via voicemail as noted on the agenda located on the Park District website. So
Great.
today's staff presenters include Ruby Tumber, Renee Patterson, Sergeant Ernie Haga, and Officer Fred Greer.
Great, thank you. And then also public comments will be at the end of the agenda. So can you please do a roll call?
Sure can. Director Samong?
Here.
Director Corbett?
Here.
Chair Rosario?
Here.
AGM Gorgian?
Here.
If there are no questions about the meeting procedures, we will begin.
Thank you. So we're going to switch the agenda a little bit to accommodate Director Corbett has to leave early. So we're going to be moving up items number 4 up. We're going to bump it up to number 3, and then the number 3 will be last, the air support unit outlook. So let's begin with Delta Access Fallman Farmer lease.
Good afternoon, board members. My name is Renee Patterson. I'm an admin analyst in operations business services. And sorry for my fumbling around here a little bit.
Okay.
Not sure.
Go ahead. Screen share.
Okay.
This one.
This one. Oh, yeah, that one. There we go.
Go ahead, just play it.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Okay. And do I just hit this when I want to go to the next one?
The right button.
Sorry.
The right arrow. Right there.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about that. Today, we're asking for a recommendation for authorization to amend and extend the agricultural lease at Delta Access. So we'll look at the location, which is kind of way out there. Get a little background. I'll go over the amendment and then the recommendation. So as you can see, Delta Access is in the far right-hand corner of our district map. It's in the purple circle there. This is a close-up of the Delta Access property that some people call Fallman, some people call Adjacent. It's actually 2 separate pieces of property that are connected. The top portion is Fallman. We acquired that in 2002. And then the bottom portion that looks like a sideways T, that we acquired in 2013, and the previous owner was Adjacent. Here it is in a satellite view, and you can still kind of see the shape. It also shows you how close it is to a housing community. There's a resort right next to it. There's a couple of waterways through there. So for background, February 19th, 2019, we approved an agricultural lease agreement with Gino Turley. He's the owner of Lemhi Land and Cattle LLC. He was given a 2-year and 6-month term with 1 additional 3-year term, and he's in the middle of that 3-year term. the purpose out there of having this lease is agricultural farming use and stewardship with plowing and planting crops on the property. So this also generates revenue for the district, and Lemhi Land and Cattle is managing on-site vegetation during land bank period prior to the park planning process, which has not begun yet. So he maintains existing irrigation channels, and the drainages are kept clear of vegetation to facilitate crop irrigation. And then in the past, he's had crops of wheat, hay, and alfalfa, along with sheep grazing for soil health, which has resulted in a higher yield. So this is the entry to the property. It's on Orwood Road in Brentwood, and it's immediately east of the Werner Dredger Cut, if anyone knows where that is, and north of Discovery Bay, which most people know where that is. So it's in unincorporated Contra Costa County, and every acre that is farmable is currently being farmed. So no matter what it looks like when you look at a satellite view, it's being farmed. So in some way. And there are no paved roads on this site. So when it's inclement like this, it's pretty muddy out there. This is another view of the fields. There's also a comm site at this location that is not ours, and it's not on our land. But a lot of people note it when they go out there to visit, and they're like, oh, what's with that? So this is a view of a field planted in winter beardless wheat. And this crop will be harvested in early to mid-May. And then it'll be baled into hay for cows. And in this picture, you can see the cement ditch next to this dirt road. There's sort of a cement colored thing there. That's a cement ditch. And that irrigates the eastern block of fields. And Lemhi diverts water directly from the delta through a canal that is shared with neighboring property. And from there, it is diverted again into these cement ditches and earth ditches on the property to convey it to the different fields. Then flood irrigation is used for the water to travel across the field and irrigate the crops. It's a kind of a weird setup. So any excess water that's captured in drainage ditches will eventually be pumped back into the delta through the reclamation district pumps. So the reason for the extension is that with an additional 5-year term, Lemhi Land and Cattle LLC will perform some improvements. One is to amend the soil. Another, fix the balance of the water conveyance system. He'll clean the balance of the drainage ditches, which he's not quite, he's been doing that all along, but he hasn't quite finished yet. He'll establish approximately 170 acres of the property into alfalfa. So again, I want to remind you, the pumps on the property are owned by the reclamation district out there, not by us, and we do not maintain them. So today we're asking for a recommendation to amend and extend the lease with Lemhi Land and Cattle. Park District staff recommends that the Board Operations Committee approve and recommend to the full board an amendment to the agricultural lease with Lemhi Land and Cattle LLC to extend the current agreement of 5 years with an annual rent payment of $48,450 to allow the lessee the time to make improvements and recoup expenses. So if you have any questions today about this recommendation to amend and extend the agricultural lease. Oops. Can I go back? There we go. Ruby Tumber's here. She's the acting business services manager and knows, of course, about this lease. We also, Carlos is not here today. but David Kendall, who's the Delta Unit Manager, is here. And then Gino Terlai, who's the owner of Lemhi Land and Cattle, is also in attendance by phone. So you have any questions?
Presentation.
Mhm.
I will ask colleagues on the board. Director Corbett.
I don't really have any questions. I think the suggestion and the presentation looks good. Thank you for the good work. Thank you.
Director San Juan.
Yes, I have a lot of, I find this to be very interesting. First of all, I'll share, and thanks so much for putting this together. It's very straightforward. I'm curious, the fourth bullet point about the 170 acres of the property into alfalfa, is that adding an additional 170 acres, or is that an existing 170, or is it kind of a mixture of both? Is it going to
I'm
expand agriculture?
Gino is here and I'm going to let him answer that question. If you would, please.
Yeah, so that'll just be converting a field from one crop type to alfalfa. So currently it's wheat hay, and that'll be converting that crop type to alfalfa.
Okay, and then I'm curious, so when you're talking about the the flood irrigation and the stormwaters, is this property, is this, these agricultural fields, are they designed then to capture the excess stormwaters, and then ultimately the pumps that are there will then pump that back into the delta, and that's part of the way that this agreement is made in terms of being able to bring in water directly from the delta and have these drainage ditches available?
Yeah, that's correct.
And I'm not familiar with the Delta Farms Reclamation District, but is that ultimately how that district is set up? Is that a special district, by the way?
So the reclamation district is basically similar to like a water district in other areas. Instead of being a district that just provides irrigation water for properties within the district, it also includes maintaining drainage and pumping systems to allow for excess water to be pumped back into the river. So they're standard, they're quasi-governmental agencies that are isolated for specific geographic regions. So this district covers the geographical region of Borwood and Palm Tract, which is the neighboring tract to the west of this.
And are those both in Contra Costa County or?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then I see that there's a fee for San Joaquin County. So I was just curious how that gets up. But I know you're almost right on the border. In fact, yesterday at Legislative Committee, I was trying to figure out in terms of a trivia question, what is the East Bay Regional Park District that's furthest east? And it might actually be this one, looking at the map from earlier in the presentation. But just real quick about the San Joaquin County fee, is that just because of the proximity and or the waters coming through San Joaquin County? And it's okay if you don't know the answer. That's a very minor detail. It's more me being curious.
Yeah, I think that the San Joaquin County and Delta Water Quality Coalition covers this area because it's part of the greater Delta region. So I think that might encompass areas outside of San Joaquin County.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you.
And I have a couple of questions. Regarding the cleaning of the irrigation channels and drainages, is that done mechanically or are you using herbicides?
That's done mechanically with an excavator.
Excellent. And then I noticed you were, I think you're going to be fertilizing using gypsum. This might be an area where we might be able to use some biochar. Once we find out that the biochar is available and a good amendment to the soil, this would be another great project to use our biochar. And then lastly is, I noticed this is called a recreation area. What are the future plans for this for this parcel. Are we there? Are we there yet?
Lisa Gorgon, Assistant General Manager of Operations. That's a great question. My understanding, we talked a little bit about this when we were rehearsing, because we thought that question might come up, and it was our understanding it was purchased for Delta access, for a put-in, but there's been no planning, there's been no it's in land bank status right now. So it's not on anybody's work plan to advance that, but I think that was the initial intent with this property. It also is right along the route of the I'm going to get it wrong.
Meds,
The Mokolokemi to,
aqueduct, maybe the
well,
pipeline.
no, there's a trail. It's called a trail, right?
Does that
So
say mud?
Well, we like to think of it as a regional trail. So the district did just make improvements to the Orwood Bridge for some bike ped improvements in the past couple of years. So it is right along that regional trail as well. That's heading east. It goes east-west, and so that might be another component of facilities that could support that regional trail. But again, no planning has been done on that.
I just like the idea that even though it's kind of land bank, but it's actually being worked and used in agriculture, which is fantastic. And I appreciate all the work that Mr. Torlai has done and is going to do on the property. So that's all the questions I have. Thank you. Any public comments on this item?
No, there are no public comments on this item, Director Rosario.
Great. Then we are. We got a motion here, Director San Wong, and a
Yes.
second, Director Corbett.
And I was just going to say one last thing.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
It's just really nice to see how this land is cared for in such a, nice opportunity for what's growing on it, because that's very important. So thank you for the good work that you do.
Thank you.
That's something that we can teach people about, can let them know how it's done there. And I don't know if we ever have any student groups that might come down and take a look and see how this is done. I think that might be a nice thing to do sometime.
Good idea.
Would you be okay with that?
Definitely.
Great. Thank you so much.
That reminds me that I meant to say that Gina works really well with the park staff, both in the office here and in the field. And that Carlos really appreciates his, attention to what's going on out there, because it is kind of out there. I mean, it's a ways from Carlos's general area. So he really appreciates the work that Carlos does out there.
Yeah.
It's very reliable.
Thank you. And I'm glad to second the measure.
Great. Can you roll call vote, please, Denise?
Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director San Wong,
Yes.
Director Rosario,
Aye.
so moved.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Great presentation.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Regional shoreline.
I want to say thank you to Mr. Torlai for joining us today. Right. I will do my best to talk over this wind behind me. All right. Hi, Board Operations Committee. I'm Ruby Tumber. I'm the Acting Business Services Manager for Operations. I'm here today seeking a recommendation from this committee for the full board to enter into an agreement with Mr. Daniel Hopper to perform caretaking services at the Port Costa Brickyard TXI Brickyard TXI property at the Carquinez Regional Shoreline. We are joined here today by Delta Unit Manager David Kendall, as well as Park Supervisor Travis Vincent. This is the overall recommendation we are seeking here today. We recommend entering into an agreement for caretaking services for Port Costa Brickyard TXI at Carquinez Regional Shoreline with Daniel Hopper. The initial term of this agreement will be 2 years commencing July 1st of this year, with the possibility of a singular 3-year extension upon mutual agreement of both parties. The term with the extension would be 5 years total, up to $115,000 max. The cost to the Park District is about $23,000 a year. This represents the cost of utilities provided by the Park District to the caretaker for the residents and other site structures. There is no direct payment to the caretaker, and we will get into a little bit more of that later. This presentation will cover caretakers in the Park District as a whole, and then go into the detail of the Carquinez TXI property, its location, its property description, the operational challenges, the caretaker services, and finally, a repeat of the recommendation. As a review, caretakers are not Park District employees. This is a different agreement than what you may be familiar with park residences, which are given to Park District employees. Caretakers operate under an agreement with parameters specific to each location. Caretakers can be roughly divided into 2 different groups with potential for overlap. The first group of caretakers are used in situations that require a round-the-clock security presence or have complex or unique operational needs dependent upon that location. The Carquinez TXI caretaker is in the first camp. The second group of caretakers are used when the Park District has acquired property and is leased a portion of that property back to the former property owner, or where the property was recently acquired and a temporary security presence is needed during the interim period in which park plans are developed. This is the location within the little box on the map. The Carquinez TXI property, also known as the Brickyard, is located east of the town of Port Costa and west of the city of Martinez. The former factory area is in land bank status and is closed to the public during this evaluation period. However, the public can access the adjacent Port Costa staging area to access the George Miller Trail that leads to the eastern section of Carquinez Street Regional Shoreline. So if you can see here, the park is kind of divided into 2 segments. That little segment in between is the land bank property, and on that land bank property is the Port Costa staging area. That's where the caretaker resides. That is not accessible to the public, but that George Miller Trail is kind of the accessible portion that connects the 2 park areas. This is a closer look at the property. The property is accessed from the Carquinez Scenic Drive, which dead ends at the western terminus of the George Miller Trail. The total Carquinez TXI property is just under 149 acres in size and is the former site of the Port Costa Brick Company, established in 1905. The company's bricks were used in many buildings across the Bay Area, including John Swett High School in Crockett, the UC Berkeley Valley Life Sciences Building, as well as 2 wings in SF San Francisco County General Hospital. The property was later owned and operated by the TXI Pacific Custom Materials Company, which made aggregate for high-rise construction throughout the Bay Area until 2005. The East Bay Regional Park District purchased this property in 2012, and it remains in land bank till today. This is an even closer look at the property. There are 2 structures that remain on site. The larger building on the top here is approximately 20,000 square feet. It's a metal structure with a 6,400 square foot enclosed area, and the remainder consisting of only a roof. Additionally, on the bottom, there's another structure that's approximately 7,700 square feet. It's it's a brick and metal warehouse building with 4 metal roll-up doors. This is where the caretaker resides, and this is where his workshop is located. I'll next be discussing some of the operational needs and challenges specific to this site. The primary challenge to taking care of the Carquinez TXI property comes from unauthorized access or trespassing. Prior to the caretaker's presence on site, the property was target for frequent vandalism, including graffiti, broken windows, copper theft, general reports of gunshots and illegal dumping, and even a few fires were reported in the past, just general unsavory activity. The number of incidents at this location have dropped from approximately 3 per month, as well as in severity, to just about 1 per month. And they generally are incidences such as illegal dumping and the occasional attempt for unauthorized access. The TXI property requires caretaker services to monitor the property for both safety and security. The caretaker lives on site and is required to maintain a presence on weekends and weeknights. Although the caretaker is permitted to leave the site on weekdays, the caretaker typically remains on site to work in the blacksmith workshop set up in the warehouse. Caretaker duties also include routine patrol of the site, minor maintenance of the residence, monitoring visitor compliance, regular reports to the park supervisor, as well as dispatch on conditions and illegal activity or other suspicious activity. Mr. Hopper was initially selected to be the caretaker at TXI in 2013 following a recruitment process seeking interested and qualified applicants. The initial agreement term was 5 years, extended by an additional 2-year term in 2018 and again renewed in 2020. The current agreement is set to expire at the end of June of this year. The Park District and Daniel Hopper negotiated a cost framework that differs from the other caretaker agreements that we generally have. As with other caretakers, the Park District covers the utilities costs for the residents and other site structures. However, the Park District also covers the utilities cost of the blacksmith shop, and therefore there is no direct direct payment to the caretaker. This cost framework allows for the caretaker to be on site more often during the week and a lower cost to the Park District in comparison to other directly paid full-time caretakers. Due to this mutually beneficial nature of the cost framework, the potential difficulty in finding an additional caretaker, in finding an additional caretaker, we are making this recommendation to continue this agreement. And this, in finality, is the recommendation we are seeking today. As the caretaker for 10 years and a former Port Costa resident, Mr. Daniel Hopper is very familiar with the area, the local community, and the Park District staff. In addition to being an accomplished blacksmith, Mr. Hopper is skilled in carpentry and minor maintenance techniques. Mr. Hopper has proved to be responsive and responsible and has established and maintained positive relationships with the Park District. Staff recommend entering into an agreement for caretaker services for Port Costa Brickyard TXI with Mr. Hopper. The initial term of this agreement, again, it is 2 years commencing July 1st, 2023, with the possibility of a singular 3-year extension upon mutual agreement with the Park District. The cost of this action is $23,000 a year, and it pays for the utilities on site. With that said, I'll close with some of Mr. Harper's artwork. As I said, he's an accomplished blacksmith. There's a photo of a railing that he designed, as well as 2 elaborate chandeliers that were designed by him. And I will do my best to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay. I should have done this at the last one too. Invite park staff. That's that they're here. If they want to add anything, that'd be great.
Afternoon, directors, Travis Vincent, Park Supervisor Carquinez. Mr. Hopper's been a great partner down there. He's very responsive to us. He does patrols around the whole site. He's good at locating illegal encampments and also addressing issues after hours, making contact with people, flying drones or other issues. So he's been a very good partner for us down there.
Oh, good, good. If I may comment, you look like you just got out of high school. Questions from my colleagues? Oh, Director San Juan?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll start with a comment. The artwork is amazing. Thanks for sharing those photos. Actually, it's nice to see that when coming to these meetings. I really liked the octopus chandelier. That's so creative. So just thank you for that. This seems pretty straightforward to me. I honestly don't even have any questions, so I'll just make some comments. I think it is really helpful to have the presence on site. And it sounds like, just based on the photos that we saw in the presentation, it sounds like and looks like this is helping in terms of managing the property. Yeah, so no questions unless there's anything that might be missing, but I think this is a fairly thorough, prepared presentation. Thanks.
Director Corbett?
And I think, I'm sure you probably mentioned this, but is there much of a cost change?
We added a small factor, I want to say less than 2%, to account for any growth in utility costs. I will say, from my typical role as management analyst, those costs do go up year after year. And because it's coded to the park budget, we didn't want them to take too much of a hit. So we did increase that amount just a little bit for the next term.
And what was the dollar amount?
The difference?
Yeah.
I think it was within like $2,000 a year.
Okay,
Yeah.
$2,000 more to pay.
$2,000 additional, like
Okay.
net difference.
Okay, all right,
Yes.
thank you very much. It is beautiful. And I
Um,
know we've talked about going out down there and taking a visit someday. And I don't know if we have. At least I haven't been there, so.
No, we were there in 2018, I believe. We had a nice tour, and his artwork is incredible.
It's
Even in person, it's just unbelievable. Yeah, but yeah, a tour would be great.
time to do it again. That's
Yeah.
go 2018.
Yeah, I have no questions either, and just wanted to say that this site has a lot of potential for interpretive, service yard, anything. It's kind of wide open. I'll be interested to see what we plan out there. Hopefully I'll still be around. But with that, any public comments, Denise, on this item?
Not on this item, Director Rosario.
Great. Is there a recommendation for motion or a motion?
It's a good time of year to go visit. I'm asking you. What's a good time of year
You can
to
come up here,
visit?
Dave.
Hello, directors. Dave Kendall, Delta Unit Manager. What was the question again?
It's a good time of year to visit.
It is, although it's not today. It
Or in
is,
the
spring is a
spring.
spring it is very beautiful out there in the spring with all the green hills. So yeah, maybe we can put that together.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, I'll make the motion.
Great.
Good.
And we have a motion and a second. Denise, can you do a roll call vote, please?
Director San Juan,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Aye.
Director Rosario.
Aye.
So moved.
Great. Thank you. Great
Thank you.
presentation. And with that, we look for our next item. Thank you for waiting. Public safety person for unit operations.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Board Operations Committee. My name's Officer Fred Greer with the Air Support Unit of the Police Department here for the district. Also in attendance is Sergeant Ernie Haga, the Chief Pilot, and Acting Chief Elzie for the Police Department. And so they're my bosses, so pretend you like this. It'll help me out a lot, okay? This is an informational only briefing to give you an overview and an outlook for your air support district or your air support unit here for the district. So let me share the screen. So let's just for a moment examine why it's so valuable to have an air support unit for the district. As I'm sure you're all aware, if you combine all of our parks and trails, we have about 200 square miles of district to cover. But that doesn't really paint the whole picture because we're spread out over 2 entire counties of Alameda and Contra Costa. We're expected to respond over distances of 1,455 square miles. So to just compare and contrast that to the region, Alameda County Sheriff's Office covers 739 square miles with 1 helicopter and 1 airplane. And Contra Costa Sheriff's Office has 2 helicopters for their 716 square miles. And Oakland Police Department has 2 helicopters for their 80 square miles. So we cover a lot more distances with our 2 helicopters. Just a touch on our history, we've been in continuous operation since 1973, starting with the basic observation platform of helicopters, all the way up to our modern technology helicopters, and a lot more capability and a lot more safety offered in our current airships. We did tragically lose Eagle One to a fatal wire strike in 1974, and since then have always been improving safety techniques to avoid any further tragedies. So just to touch on those other agencies that I mentioned before, it's important to remember that most of them, their primary role is public safety and law enforcement. So they're usually single mission air units, whereas here in the East Bay Regional Park District, we're truly a multi-mission air unit. We do much more than just one of our primary roles, which is law enforcement, and we are very valuable as a force multiplier. So there's a perfect example of that just happened yesterday, and it's really coincidental that we covered the Delta Access today, because yesterday afternoon we had a report of a group of armed subjects with shotguns on our Delta Access. Our nearest ground unit was an 1.5-hour response away. We were able to get in the helicopter and respond and be overhead in 12 minutes. From there, we were able to coordinate with Contra Costa Sheriff's Office and bring them to the scene where they were discovered just off of our property, and the Contra Costa Sheriff's Office was able to deal with them because we were able to locate them from the air. So that just happened yesterday afternoon, and it's a perfect example of how we saved the district many man hours of response time and keeping our ground units in a more effective area. But it's our pleasure. And we're also very involved in fire suppression. So that's one of our main roles also. Not only here in the Park District, able to quickly respond and fight fires, but also with our CAL FIRE partners in the region to respond to fires that affect us and the region. But we also have other roles that we fulfill here in the district. Working with the other agencies within the district, such as the fire department, we can survey from the air brush removal and also their effectiveness with the brush removal efforts for the district. We also work closely with park supervisors to identify homeless encampments, garbage dumping, hazmat situations, and especially just recently surveying the parks for damage such as flooding and landslides and safety of reopening the parks after all the weather events we've been having in the region. We also do bird surveys and invasive species surveys. We work closely with mapping and GIS support and administrative support for district orientation for new officers and the board members. So that brings us to our current helicopters, which is Eagle 7 and 8. Eagle 7 is our veteran helicopter, which we acquired in 2009, but is still excellently equipped. It is set for retirement in 2028, which we'll touch on here in a moment. But Eagle 8 was just recently acquired in 2021. Our usual complement is a pilot police officer on board and a tactical flight officer to work the cameras and equipment. We are capable of carrying up to 4 other passengers with these helicopters, or the equivalent of law enforcement and firefighting equipment. These helicopters are excellently equipped with the latest flight stabilization systems, things like FastFin technology, which makes them much more efficient, and the newest computer tactical camera operating systems. As I mentioned, we are multi-mission. This is just a good picture of our most recent helicopter acquisition. And as you see on one side, it says Regional Park Police, but on the other side is clearly marked Regional Parks Fire for that mission also. So just to touch on some traditional equipment that police helicopters were usually issued with, and that is you would have a pilot on board and what used to be called an observer, we now like to call a TFO or tactical flight officer. But he would have a pair of binoculars, a map to locate the incidents, and perhaps 2 radios to coordinate scenes. That made it very challenging and a very high workload for both the pilot and the observer. And that also resulted in what you've seen with low-flying police helicopters trying to control situations below them. And if you compare that with where we are now, with our modern avionics, we have touchscreen GPS displays with digital airspace. Here in the Bay Area with our complex airspace, that's very critical, and it really reduces the pilot workload and makes it a lot safer to manage the cockpit. That also transcends to the aircraft systems themselves, such as the touchscreens that include terrain, wire, and obstacle awareness. As we mentioned, the wire strike with Eagle 1, this will actually give us not only graphical, but audible warnings for obstacles and wires if we're at low altitudes. And we now have satellite traffic alert systems that can tell us about any other aircraft around us in the air. It's really situational awareness and safety enhancement. We also are equipped with flight stabilization systems. Now, a lot of people can call this an autopilot, but not in the traditional sense of an airliner. This can assist the pilot, for example, in holding a specific altitude when you have aircraft above you and below you here in the Bay Area, and you're trying to manage a scene beneath you. But one of the primary reasons we have these is they can be a literal lifesaver. In the case of perhaps losing visibility because of clouds in our microclimates or low light visibility, and the pilot becomes disoriented, we can literally reach over and hit that level button, and the helicopter will recover itself into a stable flying position. And then the pilot, through training and the equipment on board, can fly it to a safe visual acquisition so that you could safely land. We also have airframe cameras on board. A lot of people don't know, but in helicopters, the crew can usually only see directly in front and to the sides of the helicopter. And so that makes it very hard to see what's going on behind you or to the rear of the helicopter if you're low level in obstacle environments, or in our cases, if we're landing in the parks to render aid. With these, we can have a 360-degree view and see animals, people, obstacles, and what's going on around the aircraft. Both of our helicopters are also equipped with dual controls. In the event the pilot were to become incapacitated from perhaps a bird strike or a laser blindness or any other event, our tactical flight officers do receive basic flight training and can take control, and especially with the stabilization system on board, safely land the aircraft. So just touching on some of the capabilities of our law enforcement technology, the modern technology we have now includes large touchscreen displays where the tactical flight officer can much easier see what he's trying to acquire on the ground, point the camera, get it on to target, and control a situation much quicker than in the old days. And we also are equipped with an MX-10 high definition camera. with great zoom capabilities. So we were talking about the low flying law enforcement helicopters earlier. With this capability, we're able to keep our helicopter perhaps 1,500 to 2,500 feet above a scene and still clearly be able to see what's going on. This accomplishes a few things, and much safer flying. In the case of any emergency in the cockpit, you can easily identify a safe landing area or control the emergency. Secondly, it removes the concern that citizens may have for a low-flying helicopter over their head, and hopefully eliminate any noise complaints that we could incur. So this is what our camera kind of looks like. If you look at the video here, this is just recently, this was a carjacking out of our Olympic staging area. We were able to acquire this pursuit and follow it into downtown Oakland. This video image is taken from 1,500 feet in the air from about a half a mile away. And well, it's a little jerky there, but as you see, the suspects got out, ran into a local business, and we were able to guide Oakland Police Department to their location and effect a successful arrest in this case. The camera I mentioned is also supplemented with the Aero computer, which gives you real-time overlays onto the video, which shows you streets, addresses, points of interest, and we have a custom waypoint database that includes all park entrances, staging areas, points of interest. This is a bit of an example of it. On the right, if you can see, the small blue triangles are all waypoints we've put in for the district alone. On the left is the Martinez shoreline, which we were looking at the time from about a mile away at 2,000 feet. So in the old days, you would have to bring up a map book and try to find where that location was and then radio it. In this case, it's instantaneous. We also have a wonderful communication suite on board that is digital and programmable. We have all of the regional police departments and fire capabilities programmed in already. But if we're out of region, for example, helping CAL FIRE, we could manually program these also. We have the capability to do cell phone communication straight from the panel here to either coordinate with assets on the ground, or for example, if you're looking for a lost park user, we could call them directly and have them guide us in so we could locate them. If we're out of cell phone coverage, we also have satellite phone capability on there. The helicopters are all equipped with dual tactical flight officer stations. In other words, there's one in the back seat. This can be very helpful in the case of putting a third crew member on board in case you wanted to handle a large or critical incident. But primarily we use it for the operational tactical flight officer to sit in the back and train either a new pilot or a new tactical flight officer with the technical capabilities in the front. We have a lot of other equipment that assists in life-saving capabilities. We have the crew equipped with night vision gear for low light or night operations. We have infrared cameras. We are currently working on a microwave video downlink system so that we could beam live video to the ground. We have a slave searchlight to the camera. And we also carry basic life-saving first aid equipment on board, including an AED for a CPR type situation. And just to show you what the infrared looks like, this is another very recent situation where assault with a deadly weapon suspects had fled into the hills of the Altamont Pass amongst the windmills at night. Alameda County Sheriff's Office could not locate them, and they asked us to assist them. We were easily able to locate the vehicle in the darkness and guide the deputies in for another successful arrest. Now, let's talk about our staffing. Currently, we have myself and one brand new pilot. She's undergoing district training now. The third pilot is our chief pilot, the sergeant who is also administratively running the unit. We have one full-time tactical flight officer. So that enables us to cover one side of the week currently. Ideally, we would be, and we're set up to be staffed with 4 full-time pilots and hopefully 2 full-time tactical flight officers. If we obtain that staffing, we'll be able to staff 7 days a week and shifts. So all our pilots currently are required to have either a commercial or airline transport pilot rating. We're all certified flight instructors and do have an instrument rating. If you combine the flying experience of the 3 pilots we have now, we all average about 20 years each. And we all average about 7,000 flight hours each. But keep in mind, when we talk about flight hours, other agencies such as CHP, most of their officers have about 500 to 2,500 hours. And most air medical pilots you see flying out there have about 2,500 hours. So we're very fortunate to have the level of experience we do here at the district. Also fortunate to have such an experienced mechanic. He has over 34 years of maintenance experience, which leads us to our in-house maintenance program, which saves the district quite a bit of cost. We don't have to pay the high commercial hourly rates, and we don't have to usually remove our helicopters from service to take them to other maintenance facilities, which also prevents extended downtime. So having an in-house maintenance program is valuable. Now, if we ever do get to the staffing we hope and start flying more consistently, we would hope to have a second maintenance personnel so that we could maintain our 2 helicopters tip-top shape, ready to go 7 days a week. Just take a peek at the 2022 statistics, but please keep in mind that 2022 was a rebuilding year for our air unit. I was new here. I've only been with the district 19 months at this point, and undergoing flight training with the chief pilot. And still manning one side of the week, we were able to accomplish these numbers. A good example of that is just the vehicle pursuits alone at the bottom there. In all of 2022, we were involved in 4 vehicle pursuits, whereas here in 2023, it's only March and we've already been involved in 4 vehicle pursuits, all with successful outcomes. If we do achieve full staffing, those numbers would be at a minimum 4-fold, if not much more, and we'd be much more productive and useful for the district. And that brings us to our outlook, and we do hope to achieve full staffing. We're working hard on that now in conjunction with human resources. And there are some very unique challenges to obtaining pilot officers. There is a nationwide pilot shortage now in general for the whole industry, but then you combine that with the unique challenge of finding someone who's also capable of being a police officer, and then the challenge of moving into a very high cost of living area for the candidates. Again, we would hope to eventually identify and bring on a second maintenance personnel when we are up to full staffing. When Eagle 7 retires in just a couple years here, we're hopeful for the potential to bring on a twin engine, more capable aircraft. This would immediately increase our safety capability, because if there were any potential mechanical problem in the air, in almost any emergency in such an aircraft, you could safely fly back to the airport on the remaining engine. It would also give our well, it would give us much more capability in general. We would be able to lift more water for firefighting, example. We would have more room and more power available to explore possibilities for the district, such as hoist and rescue and medical response and rescue. Our current facilities lease will be up soon, and we're already in working a project to hopefully identify and construct a new facility more centrally located in the district, where we would actually have more availability to fly because we'd be away from coastal weather. And if we did construct such a facility, it would also serve the district on another level, because we'd be able to co-locate a deployment point for patrol personnel centrally located in our district. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to give you an overview of our units and our hopeful future. I can try to answer any questions you have, or at least get back with you for any information you might have.
Great presentation. Director San Juan.
Yeah, I have a number of comments and then a few questions. First of all, thank you for this in-depth overview. It was actually very interesting to me. And all I could think about is, early in my career, I worked in design and engineering software. And I actually was a software trainer, and I went to the Sikorsky R&D group in Connecticut and helped did training for them. And then I also went to, I believe it's a US naval site in Pax River, which is the tip of Maryland, of the state of Maryland.
Right.
And that was their helicopter team for the US Navy. So it's really interesting now to see, they were designing, newer or maybe remodels of helicopters. So it's very interesting to see it in practice here, although that might have been more on the DoD side. And I know that we're using Airbus, and
Right.
I did not work with Airbus, I'll share, but still it's just interesting for me to hear how it's being used. So thank you for the in-depth
My pleasure.
overview. I didn't really spend the rest of my career in helicopters, so it's just kind of nice to refresh this, though, having had some experience. In terms of my questions, let me see. There's a couple different places, and then also I'm very eager to go up in one of the helicopters soon. And I know that I did receive the outreach. It's I commented that it's been quite the whirlwind getting up to speed here in a good way. So certainly I'll be in touch, and I am very eager for that. So thank you for the invitation.
Our pleasure.
And I'll be looking forward to, again, as someone that worked on more on the design side of helicopters, I think it'll be really interesting for me too. So one of my first questions, you had mentioned how sometimes you might be using the helicopters to survey potential encampments. And I'm just curious, because I know we had previously reviewed the operations calendar. And did we have this particular topic? I know it's a very sensitive topic on our agenda for the year in terms of what what we've done, just to get an overview of encampments in general.
I can check.
Okay, yes. And so I'll put that out there. And the only reason is I know in my previous role on the Zone 7 Water Agency, where we did have some flood control responsibilities, we had a lot of the Zone 7 owns a lot of the land of the arroyos within the Tri-Valley area, and there were some encampments along the creeks, and that is something that happens. That isn't uncommon to have these encampments pop up both in parkland and along creeks and waterways. And so that is something that I would be curious at some point to learn more about within the park district. And then my next question, it's interesting because I was thinking about this, and then you showed the infrared night vision example of Altamont Pass and how we partnered with Alameda County sheriffs on that to assist them.
Correct.
How much or how often, or maybe that's not the best, not in terms of frequency, but it sounds like we do have a good partnership in terms of helping with a lot of these maybe eastern portions of both counties, which tend to be unincorporated and very
Rural and hard to
rural
access.
and hard to access. Yeah. So, we have a couple of other times that we've helped each county sheriff's office
Quite
go out.
often. Yeah.
Quite often. Okay.
Quite often. The Eagle unit, the air support unit, is actually one of the best ambassadors for the district in reaching out to local agencies. We help them as much as that we can.
Mhm.
District priorities will always come first, but we also, I should point out, and I should have pointed out, that we're on a proactive patrol for our district. We're often covering all of our parks and our staging areas, not only as a deterrent, but also to scan for any on-view violations or suspicious activity. So we're often in the air overhead of all these other jurisdictions, and they're aware of us and will call us often for help.
Yeah, I like hearing about this, just to show another aspect of how the park district is, an important regional
It is a regional.
partner.
Exactly, yeah.
Beyond, parks and recreation, but also this is a really important aspect because I'll share again, since I came into this role, I've been studying the maps a lot, specifically the southeast portion of Alameda County, which, a lot of that's private land, but it's also very rural. A lot of, the peaks of Alameda County are there and are actually on private land, so not necessarily accessible by the general public. Although if you go to All Trails, they'll still talk about accessing these private properties. I do not recommend that. Anyways, so my question is, I think we might help there because we do have similar park district land where the geography is similar and the terrain similar. So even though it's private property, that's something that we may be called upon, or maybe in the past we've assisted with?
Or assisted with, exactly. And it's very interesting. You make a very good point. All of our park districts is intertwined with private property and
Mhm.
other municipalities. So you can have park district areas, even a very small part that we need to cover that may be very hard for ground units to cover, but we're able to get there, but it's surrounded by all these other either jurisdictions or private property. And if we see something there, we can notify the proper people to address it. Yeah.
Sure, I'll make a comment on that. I know it's very interesting debate. There's the N3 cattle ranch. That was, a big topic, at least, where I live. It's near Lake Del Val. And it did change hands. I believe there was a purchase of that property, and I think it may be, it's a private purchase, and I think it may still be used in a similar manner as to how it was used before. But I know at one point California State Parks had expressed interest in that parcel, and then Alameda County Water District, who has some water rights to the water that's stored at Lake Del Val, was interested, but ultimately it stayed in private hands. At the same time, I think a lot of that terrain is similar to ours. So it is interesting. I think I'm also probably going to say that maybe when we do the helicopter ride, I may want to go and take a look over in that area near Del Val, just so you know. So this is really helpful. It just gives me a really good perspective.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I think I had one other question, but now I'm not really remembering what it is. So I'll follow up if it comes up
Absolutely.
again. And
Anytime.
thank you again. This is
Give us a
really
call.
nice,
Happy-
thorough presentation.
Happy to.
Great. Great presentation. And just a follow-up question to Director San Juan. When we do all these mutual aids, do we have any kind of MOU, or is it just a handshake?
Okay. Whoops.
program or
Let the
or
boss
no?
answer that.
We didn't really have the capability that we wanted to have.
Uh-huh,
We do what we can with what we have. We
Yeah.
still do assist in any way possible. And there's quite a bit we can still do, but we can do it better with more equipment or different equipment.
yeah,
We can do it quicker. So if we can pursue that or explore that, that would be beneficial.
okay. Great, I'll put that in my little hat. But we do have the ability, like you said, you have a capability of carrying 4 people.
Yes,
And so if there was if there was an incident where someone was hurt, but they didn't need a stretcher, you
yes.
could put them in a helicopter.
That's actually part of our training that we cover pretty extensively is when we could either bring, for example, an injured hiker out of an area or bring medical personnel to
Right.
the injured hiker. So, we have certain parameters that we need to meet to be able to put them on the helicopter. We wouldn't want to make the situation worse by putting them on the helicopter if they were direly injured, but we could bring medical personnel to them perhaps.
Yeah, no, that's, you've done
So
that.
absolutely, we do have that capability though, is the short answer.
Okay, great. Because we've done that in the past.
Right.
And then, let's see, what was my last question? Go ahead.
If you want to
Yeah.
remember, be like 2 rounds.
Yeah.
Um,
We'll make up for Director Corbett not being here.
yes, exactly. Well, I mean, there's so many different things. So I've 2 questions. I'm trying to think which one to start with. The one, it was the really sad situation in the Pleasanton Ridge with the missing hiker during the heat wave. And I was just wondering if you could share a little bit about how the helicopter might have been used during that time.
Actually, that happened the week I moved here to take this job. Ernie was the one flying those missions, helping look for the guy, correct? So if you wanted to talk to that.
We, there was very limited amount of capability that we would have had. I don't know the exact spot he was located, but we often have difficulty with tree cover, being able to see through that. If we had been able to respond immediately when the first instance or information was available, while he was still warm, we had the capability of seeing that with our FLIR. So we could have identified him very quickly in that case, but we were called much later than that. So there's very little we could do except explore the area and try to find him visually. So unfortunately, that was the case, but timing is really critical in many cases.
Absolutely, absolutely. And then my second question that I now remember is you talked about the lease being up soon. That's at the Hayward
Correct.
Airport. And then so we're looking at other options more central in the district.
Yes.
What are some of those options that we're looking into?
Was that your question too?
Director Rousey, may I respond to that? Yeah, so Lisa Gorgon, again, that's ASD is taking the lead on that,
Right.
working with public safety. And so that is something that land is working on. And so that can be maybe a follow-up. They can follow up with you.
Yeah, I had a conversation with the POA president, Chris Spencer, and he brought it up, and it totally makes sense to bring the unit inland. That way you can increase your flight times,
Precisely.
and it totally makes sense. So good luck with that. Yeah,
I'm good.
and that was the question. She had it. We're
Well,
thinking
thanks for the
alike.
questions. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you very much for all you do. I'm really waiting to bring on our first female pilot.
Yeah, she's in the works. She's
Yeah,
training right now.
That's great. And you guys stay safe out there.
Thank you very
I
much.
appreciate everything you do. Thank you.
Thank you, folks. Have a good day.
Chair Rosari, we do have a public comment on this item.
Excellent.
I'll admit Mr.
With them. Okay.
Brew. Mr. Brew, you have
thank you.
3 minutes.
Talking about embankments along arroyos in the Tri-Valley, the embankment at the Arroyo de la Laguna near Verona in Sinol has failed. Zone 7 apparently has a failed flood control effort there where it has shut down the main entrance to Pleasanton Ridge Regional Park at Foothill Road, and the repairs on that road are ongoing. It now looks like it's going to cost upwards of $2 million. So flood control, very important, and Zone 7 is not doing such a good job of it from the point of view of us who visit Pleasanton Ridge. And there's some debate over whether twin engine helicopters are safer than single engine helicopters. While some argue that having two engines provides an extra level of safety, others point out that the second engine doesn't necessarily make the flight any safer. I'm quoting from Google. And evidence shows that 95% of helicopter accidents have nothing to do with whether the aircraft was twin or single engine model. So both types offer practically the same degree of safety. I'd like to refer you to the famous Potato Chip Rock, Mount Woodson in San Diego near Poway. And I've talked to their rangers, their staff. I went down there and they told me that they rely on helicopters to go up there and rescue their hikers. It's hotter than Mission Peak and probably more dangerous, but they don't drive up there. They send in helicopters and get those people out when they break their ankles or fall off the cliff or whatever they do. So yeah, helicopters very important, and maybe we need to use them for things like that, and a little bit less for political surveillance or intelligence-led policing where you're targeting political targets. Thanks.
Thank you, Kelly. And that brings us to any additional comments, and then from the board, and then I'll ask for AGM comments.
I don't believe I have any additional comments, but this was a really helpful committee meeting. And I did realize actually I believe this is our first in person since I joined the committee. So that's why it felt different being here, because the last couple were on Zoom. So it's great to, try something different and new.
Yeah. And I'd say, I just want to thank all the presenters today. Very concise, very informative, and well done. So thank you.
Chair Rosari, we do have one member of the public to speak on the public comments item.
Okay. We will take that comment. Mr. Abreu, go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just yesterday over in Castro Valley, they were proposing, developers proposing to put in 10 new houses right up against the fence line of Lake Chabot and the 10 Hills Trail. And the developer went to the park district and said, hey, can we let people into the park, and the families, the children, the local residents can come right in here and go walking in the park. And your staff told them no. Your staff told them that you want to somehow control entry and exit, and you don't want these people just wandering in randomly into walking into a park. Well, I'm very, very confused. I'm very concerned. It seems like you have a double standard. If you go over here to something called Dublin Hills Regional Park, I think is the name of it, and there's a Brigadoon Lane, leads right into these, suburban houses, upscale, up in the hills, tucked into your regional parks, like little ravines along the ravines along the ridge lines. They get their own little privileged access right there. And the same thing happens elsewhere over there. Someplace called Inspiration Circle, someplace called Martin Canyon Trail, probably run by the city, but the city ties right into your trails. So these people who live up there in these, and also in Castlewood, that happens all the time, where little trails, and this is on private roads, people who live up there in these upscale suburban houses are able to get nice, convenient access to their neighboring regional park. But people in Castro Valley who are building new houses, and their neighbors, the whole little neighborhood, have to walk a mile to get into a park entrance. I'm very concerned. I'm really outraged. Why is it that Dublin can get into parks and Castro Valley can't? I'm very upset about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Abreu. And then Assistant General Manager.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just trying to get on the Zoom, so hold on. Okay. Okay, my microphone kept turning on, so I was having some technical difficulties, like as you've mentioned, this is my first board operating committee meeting, I think, in person. So thank you. So just I did want to just provide a couple updates just with the storms. We've been very fortunate that we really haven't had the closures that we had in January. So, but we did close down Del Val on Monday in preparation of rising water levels. So we are in close coordination with Department of Water Resources and the Corps. Park staff have been attending meetings. They were at one this morning. And so we're not at we're not at flooding yet. We're getting about just a tenth, 0.6 of an inch per hour right now. So it's we're waiting to see how we're affected, but park staff did coordinate with PG&E, and they turned the power off on Sunday, disconnected the docks, did the sort of the work that needed to be done to protect the park facilities. So we'll wait and see what happens.
Any impact of any of the infrastructure that we just recently rebuilt, like the water and sewer?
The water treatment the water treatment plant, that was shut down just because of the turbidity in the water. So there was no damage to that facility. But there continues to be, a lot of impacts to the utilities that are in the flooding area. So every time it floods, it does not do us any favors to have our infrastructure located, below the flood level.
Yeah.
And my understanding in speaking with Chief of Operations Steve Castile, Dave Vance, is we're really maybe less concerned about the flooding because we're not sure what the models have been a little bit it's a situation where we're waiting to see if the models will play out, but we know that the creek usually rises, and so we expect a lot of debris removal and impacts from just the creeks overtopping. So, but we had started to do some repairs to the restrooms that were flooded in January, so that will, of course, that's on hold right now, but the levels to date through today have been low enough where we've been able to keep work at the restroom, replacing the restroom on the west side. So it's not as, we're not seeing the impact that we saw in January, but we're prepared.
Yeah. Good, that's good to hear. Is there any thoughts to moving some of the infrastructure to higher ground in the future?
I think staff have thought about that for a long time. So yeah, I think that's part of the assessment. Again, now that we have a capital program matrix to really be able to look holistically at all of our capital infrastructure needs, we'll be considering that.
Yeah, I think it would be beneficial for the future because we're probably going to be in this period of feast or famine when it comes to water.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because we have a lot of infrastructure that is, really subject to this changing climate and how, the impacts that really, I think those weren't considered when they were put in.
Yeah, I know, like I've advocated in the past that Fire Station 2 should be pulled out off of Redwood Creek. And so this is the third time it's been affected. So hopefully someone will listen to me this time. But anyway, yeah, that's good news. I think really kudos to all the crews doing that. I mean, there's going to be a gazillion trees down after today and for the rest of the storm. So just tell everyone we appreciate all the effort out there and just to stay safe and
Yeah,
yeah.
I will I will certainly, and yeah, our park operations, all staff, across the district really do an amazing job. One of the, in my new role, what I'm learning is just the close coordination between public affairs and park operations. So I see, they do such a nice job of alerting so that the website can be updated. So anytime we have a trail closure or, a park closure, that immediately goes to the, we have a distribution list for park closure updates. And so it gets
Great.
immediately updated on the website. So in the field, certainly there's a lot of work gets done, but then behind the scenes, there's a lot of work done to let our community know what's available and what's shut for safety,
Yeah, that's my
because it's
go-to for information
inaccessibility.
is our website.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. So
you're doing they're doing a very good job of keeping it updated, which is great.
yeah, and we do work, so closely with our other county partners. And so, over the weekend, the entrance to Sunol was closed in Black Dam Mines, but then crews got in and cleared the roads. So then they were open again. So it's very dynamic.
Yeah. I was at the Alameda County's mayor's conference and East Bay Mud gave a great presentation.
Mm.
They're releasing water from all their reservoirs. So I don't know how that's going to affect people downstream, but they have to.
Yeah, well, I think the Corps has models so they're really tracking the volume of water. So I think those water, East Bay Mud, so 7 Department, they're all working closely with the Corps.
Great. Thank you. Any questions?
Yes, again, going back to Del Valle, I know after the 2017 storms, I am familiar with some of the liaison committee meetings that happened between East Bay Regional Park District and Zone 7 in terms of talking about what happened back in 2017. So I think as we revisit what's happening this time around with these current storms, we may want to go back and look at some of the records from after the 2017 storms as well. And then, with the CIP, the Capital Improvement Program, I think I need to become a little bit more familiar with our rubric for that. I have an idea. I know it had been presented to the Park Advisory Committee while I was on the Park Advisory Committee, but and I think as a board, we're going to be reviewing that. So I don't know if we necessarily need to prioritize that through this. And that's not really operations committee either.
No,
So I'm still
no.
learning as I go.
Yeah, no, I think, but I think it's great to get this input at the board operating committee that these are, areas of capital improvement that I think traditionally hadn't really been evaluated.
Yep. And so this is a good conversation to have. And the other thing that I'm thinking of too, in terms of the close collaboration with public affairs and the situation as it's happening, yesterday our big incident happened near me. The park I live closest to is Shadow Cliffs. And we had a portion of the sidewalk fall into the Shadow Cliffs Lake yesterday. And so me being me, I of course decided, this is a great, and it wasn't raining. And we had an hour later because of time change. I'm like, I'm going to go to Shadow Cliffs and see what's going on. And so I did walk Shadow Cliffs yesterday just to see from the lake perspective what was going on. And it was interesting because you can see when you're walking around Shadow Cliffs Lake that there is reinforcement with some sort of cement concrete along most of that sidewalk up until the point where it fell. And that's where there's more of the natural soil. It's right next to the CEMEX mining facility. And so it's very interesting because it's just a small portion along the lake that is not, supported with some cement and concrete. And that's the part that fell. And I guess it did fall into the lake. I don't know if we have that information, but I mean, that's what it looks like happened.
Yeah, I think we're working with Alameda County. So
yeah, so that was my question actually, so when that happened, I'm sure we were involved in that. conversation. And then
Yeah.
also like the road, Stanley Boulevard was closed for a number of hours yesterday, which means that cars couldn't enter into that Shadow Cliffs
Mhm.
parking lot, but you could
Mhm.
still enter because there's some trails that connect to Shadow Cliffs from other parts of the area.
Right, yeah, I think, and I'm just not very familiar with sort of the right of way. Sort of, I think it's just happened right along the road there. So again, Fred, the park supervisor, and Dave Vance working really closely with Alameda County.
Yeah, because I believe the road technically is Alameda County, but then Shadow Cliffs and Cemex are within like the city of Pleasanton boundaries. So it's like just right on that line. And then my other question is, so when we're talking about extending the Iron Horse Trail into Livermore, it is along Stanley Boulevard, I believe, that we're looking at. So this pathway, I don't think it currently is considered the Iron Horse Trail. Again, I have this on my to-do list to learn more about this, but I think it's going to be the intention is for it to be part of the Iron Horse Trail at some point.
Yeah, that's a good question for
I'll
for
figure it out over
ASD.
time.
Yeah, that one I'm just not quite sure about. So, but I think
okay.
Ken is on here. So we'll make a note to follow up with you on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Sure. With that, thank you very much. And we are adjourned.